Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well today. Now I know I'm not the first person to critique the absolute state of the online dating market in this day and age, but as I tend to do on this channel, I want to try and offer a path to the future, something that we can actually work towards. While I think it's correct to critique what's going on in the modern world, simply just constantly criticizing and quote blackpilling about it, doom mongering, is not only bad for the future at what is a critical time for us, but it's also very bad for our soul. We need something to move towards which is healthy, which is life-giving. And there's always plenty of that, if you know where to look. So I'm going to end this video with what can we do to move away from this. But to start, let's look at what's going on. Now, on your screen is an example of a woman who's been swiping for 5 years on the dating app Tinder. For those who don't know, Tinder's known as one of the cheaper dating apps. It's basically a hookup app. I mean, it's a bit more broad than that, but generally speaking, most of the time, if you go on a date, a lot of men are going to want to hook up that night. So it's not exactly a classy one. And this is the swiping history. Swiping means you swipe on who you like or you don't. For a woman in her early 30s, I believe she's 34, over 5 years' time. Now, I have experienced the dating market in London. I was in it about 10 years ago, and I can tell you, it's bad. It's bad. People aren't exaggerating. When I would go on dates with women there, when I was into the whole pickup thing, I would ask them, how many swipes you have, because I'd just be interested, and they would get thousands of likes in a day. I mean, it's out of control, the attention women can get. Most of them are on the apps just for the attention. It's a confidence boost for them. Now, we can see this playing out here because this woman has swiped 63,000 times in 5 years. Of those 63,000 swipes, only 4,000 are right swipes. Again, for those who don't know, a right swipe is a yes, a left swipe is a no. Now, roughly, that equates to 6% of men she's saying yes to. And what does that tell us off the bat? Well, this tells us off the bat that this woman, who's pretty average, as we'll see, rates herself very highly because she thinks that only 6% of men are worthy. Now, A, she thinks they're worthy because, she's a girl boss, you go girl, the feminism of the age. But two, it's because it's a supply and demand market. And because there are so many men that want a quick hookup in this day and age, they're just, even if they're good looking guys, will just be like, yeah, I'll hook up with her. So basically, there's an over demand for her. She's an average girl, but there are so many men out there that she can just basically pick and choose. She's saying yes to only 6%. Can you imagine the top 6% of men? Flip that around. What are the top 6% of women? They're very attractive, right? You flip that around for the men, she's basically looking at 94% aren't good enough for her. And again, that's not all her fault. It's because there are so many men on these apps basically just wanting a hookup. Now, as we can see, of the 6%, she only matches with 1.5. And this again is where this 80-20 thing in the Red Pill comes from. Adolescence, the show about, the toxic Andrew Tates was taking this off. Oh, it's all toxic, white male nonsense. No, it's not. It's true. Look at this. This is what it's like for a woman on these apps. She swipes right 4,000 times out of 63%. Basically, this is just the top men, the only ones that are getting close. And when she matches with these 4,000, only 1,500 match back with her. Now, this tells us that this is an average woman. Because if she's a really attractive woman, all of those 4,000 men are going to match with her. Do you get what I mean? So it's like she's right swiping, but she's not getting the very, very top men herself. But she can still get a high-level man, but she can't get the top of the top, if that makes sense. So we can see that by how many she actually matches with, which is 1,500 out of the 4,000 right swipes she makes. Now, of these 1,500 matches she makes, which are, optimal men basically, she engages in only 1,000 chats. So, 500 of those chats disappear for whatever reason. And this again is where we start getting into the issues. This leads to the dates. Now, again, for whatever reason, a lot of chats, you don't meet, you're busy, etc. So she meets 60 of these guys. And this is where the problem comes, because we can see 56 of those 61 dates end with casual sex. 56 in 5 years. And 2 end up in relationships. Now, it's safe to say, if this is over 5 years, this woman has got at least 100 bodies, at least. And those guys are getting into relationships with a woman. They're probably a bit more on the needy side. who has got at least 100 guys whose ability to emotionally pair bond has disappeared. But this is where we get the real issue of our age. Who's she having casual sex with? Again, these more optimal men, the sort of guys that she should be matching with, she never even swiped yes to, because again, there's an over demand in the market. So what that means is she thinks that her standard is these very high men. Because in her mind, she thinks, well, hang on, I slept with, 3 of them the last few months. So clearly I can get one of these guys. But what she doesn't see, and what so many modern women don't see, they're called a Chad in online talk. Chad means a good-looking, muscly, 6-foot guy, earns good money, the sort of guy that women want. And when a woman who's average goes on Tinder and can basically have sex with a guy like that, she thinks, yeah, I am that standard, you see. I am beautiful. Hollywood, Nicki Minaj, whoever the Beyoncés are of the age, tell her, you go, girl, you're a strong woman. She gets pumped up by all this nonsense in the liberal media, and she thinks, yeah, I am this awesome woman. Look, I can get a Chad. The system tells me I'm great. I'm a corporate girl boss. What more could I want? The reality is, though, Chad is simply pumping and dumping because he's got nothing else to do that Friday night. Chad is holding out for that 10 out of 10 that he'll settle down with when he's 40. And at that point, he can have a couple of mistresses, plus, and that's the way he views the world. Because, look, as we've said in other contexts in the channel, men in this day and age are divorced from their tradition. They think in a very individualistic mindset. They're watching Andrew Tate. You got a Bugatti, yeah? Every man, yeah, if he had the power, would get all the women, yeah? And that sort of stuff. And he's very strong and forceful, big alpha energy, been in a kickboxing ring. A lot of guys think, yeah, I'm a kick-ass guy too. And of course, what this means is, our men in this day and age, the one who can hook up with the women, who are the optimal ones, they have no loyalty, not just to the women, but as I've said many times, you're loyal to a woman not just because of the woman, although that matters greatly in and of itself. You must care for her soul, care for her like Christ cares for you, but you're also doing it because you're loyal to your society. Because if everybody keeps womanizing, everything falls apart. You're also loyal to your community, your loyalty to your collective people. That's what monogamy is about, really. It's not just about you. It's also about the wider society and ultimately God the Father and the tradition. That creates order amongst the masses, and it means that the poor old 6 out of 10 guy will actually have someone to settle down with. So, of course, it's much neater in the long run than what we have now, which is this self-centered liberal individualism. But anyway, the girl thinks, look, I can get a Chad. But the reality is she gets banged by, 40 Chads, another 10 guys who are average. And then she realizes, oh, I'm 38. I've had all this sex. I've had well over 100 partners. And, Chad never settled for me. He's gone off with, some hot girl who's 24 and had kids. And he's still playing the field probably outside of that. But she's left alone, and then all she's got left is a corporate job and more feminism. Men are pigs, they just use you, etc., etc. That's how she starts to think about the world. So again, we can see this is why the dating market is in such a mess. And it's a mess for both men and women. Because even the men who succeed in the dating market, and I've said many times I was a loser in the dating market, kind of figured it out, worked very hard on it, learned how to dress and all that, and kind of did start to suss it out by the end. But even me personally, who did get some success in it, started to realise, dude, this is just corrosive. How can I say I love God, love my country, love my people, if I'm behaving like this? This is just pure liberalism, hedonism. It's not doing any good for anyone. But I do think more and more men are having that realisation, but still many men don't, because they're in this mindset of individualism, my success, me, me, me. I've done the hard work, why should I care about anything outside of myself? That's how your civilization dies. And of course the same is happening with the women. On the other side, they're told you, go girl, this meme which I shared on my Substack recently, Substack's link below if you want to join, which I think it really sums up modern feminism. What feminists think the gender war is, or at least told. I'm a strong, independent woman, go girl, my superpower is being a woman, and I'm fighting the man, the corporate businessman, who wants to oppress me and keep me at home. Well, I'll tell you what for, man. I'm going to go be an independent girl boss, have as many partners as I want, and I'll show you. But the reality is, of course, being the independent girl boss is exactly what the system wants. It's got them on a ball and chain. I've explored this many times on the channel. If they can take the Western woman out of the Western home, that doubles their income. Number one, you have many more tax units. But secondly, most importantly, you undermine the structure of the Western family. What that means is kids aren't being born. That's the precursor to mass immigration. Also, you deconstruct the family unit. You deconstruct the basic unit of society, which creates harmony, order, peace, safety, stability for children especially, but also for men and women. It's also a spiritual undertaking, marriage, properly understood. It's hard to turn your back on the world of temptation. I know. It's hard. What you're doing as a man when you get married is saying, do you know what? I'm saying no to the world. I'm saying no to the power of lust, to the power of hedonism. And sometimes we might not always get that perfectly, but there's always a road for redemption if we're open and willing to learn. But the point is that whole structure has been removed. And it's been all about the individual self. Total liberalism. And again, what that means is, as the great Stefan Molyneux here points out, who's back on Twitter actually. Lovely to see him on a major platform again. I know he's been on, was it Rumble for a while? But he's one of the OGs, so good to see him back on a major platform. Children require enormous time and attention. This reduces economic productivity. The only way for women to achieve anything close to economic equality with men, as the feminists want them to, is to refuse motherhood. Exactly. Thus, you get material equality, quote unquote, for half a generation, then the end of your civilization. Precisely. That's exactly it. If you remove the woman, if you remove the divine relationship between man and woman, if you remove the centrality of the family, which essentially is the precursor to the recreation of our next generation and the order of us as a people in our national sense, but also in our spiritual and traditional sense, you destroy everything. And of course, that's what's happened in the Western world. And I understand why men, on a practical level, look at the dating market and think, what is the point? Let's just be blunt. Many guys out there are average. They're between a 5 and a 7, most guys. And most women are between a 5 and a 7. Now, before all this madness came about, they would pair off with one another, maybe a 7 and a 5, maybe a 6 and a 6, however it works. But you know how it is. They meet down the pub, they get to know each other, they have the same shared sense of humour, whatever it is. But they pair off. And all right, they might have had a few relationships before, but broadly speaking, they would find each other and settle down. Well, that's gone out the window now. Because again, the 6 can go on Tinder, find all of these 8, 9 chads who will spend the Friday night with them, no problem. They'll pump and dump, leave her in the dust, and off they go on to the next one next week, And this is why it's so tragic for so many people. Because there are so many decent men out there who have a lot to offer, who are just being ignored, basically. What does that mean? That means they're prey, of course, to the red pill and even the black pill. Again, for those who don't know, the red pill is the harsh evolutionary truths about dating, hypergamy, women date up, so on and so on. And the black pill is sort of everything screwed mentality about it all. Now, as I've said many times, there is wisdom and truth in the red pill, but you have to be very careful because there's so much bitterness for obvious reasons. A lot of men are very bitter and they are learning some very harsh truths, but they don't really learn them in a positive way, in my view. It becomes a tool to look at the world and really point the finger at it and say, look how screwed we are. Look how bad things are. It's very bad for your soul, I think, now. But the point I'm making here is, where I wanted to end on, is where can we go with this as a society? Because, yeah, we can go down the red pill route, or we can just say, look, everything is just too messed up now. The dating market's a mess. We're not having kids. We're not forming families. We've lost a sense of duty to one another. What is the point? You may as well just go and enjoy it. Well, as I've said before, you're welcome to go and try that if you want. I tried that around the age of 30, and I found my soul called to me. And I believe that in each of us, unless we've got really unwell, there is that barometer of truth, of justice. And if you are listening to it, as I was starting to have a bit of a spiritual awakening, and I was like, oh yeah, that's starting to get louder, that voice. And even though I was hooking up, and of course it's all consensual, I did start to think, I just don't believe this hookup is good for me or for this woman. She's a good one. She's like 32. She should be starting to think about settling down. Time's already running out for her. Of course, I can't tell her that because you're a toxic, evil bigot and all that sort of stuff. But the point I'm making is, you can try and do that, and maybe you can get away with it. But you're really going to have to limit your heart and soul. And heart and soul is the truth of what we are, in my view. We remove those things, we create hell. If we can ignore it for ourselves, we're certainly creating it for others. That became a problem for me. So again, can we really live with this just pure decay? Are we really at the point where I say just nothing is worth fighting for anymore? I don't believe we are. I think we're far from that. The main reason for that is because we have to remember human beings always go through tough, rough times. We get humiliated. Life is tough. It was the same for our ancestors in different ways. And we have to remember the great spiritual teaching is the world is always fallen. It's never been this perfect utopia. It's always going to be messy. So we have to deal with how things are as we find them and know that there always is recourse. Number two, probably the biggest one, not all women are bad. And this is a bit of a problem with the red pill and the black pill. They sort of, female nature, put all women down into one box. And yeah, there are some broad truths about female nature. Women are attracted to masculine energy, resources, capacities, and so on. But I have experienced myself there are good women out there, even on the apps. I remember towards the end of my time on the apps, I perfected it. I was maturing myself, and you can meet good women. There were 3 or 4 women I met on those apps where I thought, yeah, you're actually all right. You're not that bad. But that came a lot of work on myself and removing a lot of that poison from the red pill of like judging every woman and being in my head all the time. So the second thing is good women are out there. All right, they might be a bit few and far between, but they are out there. The next point is, and now this is very hard for people, this one, you have to love women. You have to love what femininity is. If you don't, you're going to be really bitter towards women and you're going to create a bitter relationship down the line. You need to have a pure heart. And again, I know this is very difficult for some modern men to accept because you feel, number one, it's soppy-doppy language. I'm so sick and tired of this soppy-doppy gynocracy. So they're very wary of it for that reason, and that's understandable. Second of all, there's this sort of injustice to it. The world is it's really brutal, it's really unfair. I don't want to love anyone who's horrible and engaging in terrible behaviour. Well, I'm not saying love the terrible behaviour. What I'm saying is we have to work for that purity in ourselves and how we see others in the world. That's why I say when I'm talking about mass immigration, I don't hate these immigrants. I don't hate their tradition. Good for them. I wish them well. I just want the West to remain the West. I don't want it to be swamped with people from the third world. I know that makes me evil in the liberal mindset, but when I look in my own heart, I don't see it as evil. I don't wake up in the morning like, oh, those immigrants. If I see them when I'm walking down the road, I'm not mean to them. If I'm in a shop and they're behind the counter, I'm perfectly nice. The point is, it's just how I see the world, because again, our heart must be pure, because that will create a better condition for you down the line and also create healthy relationships. And of course, when I say love, I don't mean like Hollywood smoochy woochy or just compassion. It's an idea of it. It's a gynocracy thing. We view love as simply compassion. It's not just compassion. Love is truth. Love is also justice. Love is wisdom. Love is going beyond yourself to realize the true state of all things into being, if you will. So the point is, if we can sink into that, we can see women through that lens. And when we see them through that lens, we can really get to the key of things, because we can root out our own anger, which is going to poison ourselves. But secondly, we can see how our women, I mean Western women, have really been gone for here. The system has really gone for them. They're the key. And we have to see them as essentially being manipulated. Their motherly instincts have been manipulated to move away from their own children and the wish for them, and towards care about all these social issues. The environment is a facsimile. Immigrants are a big one. Islam is an even bigger one. There are a few defenders for Islam, like the white Western liberal women. I mean, they get so upset when you criticize Islam. And again, it's because their motherly instincts have been abused and manipulated to think that it's just an errant child and it's your hatred. That's all it is. It's your hatred. But I do think more and more of them are actually thinking, hang on a minute. When they have to share their town with a lot of these new arrivals from the third world, suddenly it's not such a conspiracy theory anymore. But the point is, instead of judging them, we have to view them as something like they've really been used, because they're the key. If you can remove the woman, like the meme I was showing earlier, you can then basically corrupt the family and so on. So what I'm saying is, we need to have that openness to realize, look, there is another way to approach this. There's a healing way, a way that we can grow through this and become better. And yeah, it's going to be messy. Yeah, it's going to be hard. Yeah, there's been humiliations. And yeah, some people are going to be too far gone. But that doesn't mean you are. And it doesn't mean every woman out there is. There is hope, friends. Big, big hope. And every day, I'm speaking to many people, emails, friends, getting in touch. They're saying to me, like, I'm noticing things are changing a little bit. I'm noticing the more and more normies are starting to question the wisdom of the liberal system. Because like most of us, they're starting to, well, where are we going to be in 20 years? You're not supposed to think that. You're supposed to think line go up politics and isn't multiculturalism great and fight against, the evil, toxic white male. That's what you're supposed to think. You're not supposed to think, well, where am I going to be in 20 years? What's my town going to look like? What's my family going to look like? What's my legacy going to be? These big questions are the things that people are starting to ask, and we need each other, to try and figure these things out. We need to go back to the heart of our tradition and find that redemption. Redemption is realizing we were on the wrong path and coming home, and ultimately it's universal law. Men and women need each other. We're meant to harmonize with one another. We're not meant to despise one another. And again, it's quite clear that many women have been turned against men, sometimes for the bad behaviour of men, no doubt about that, and we should own that. But a lot of the time, it's poisoned ideology. And the same in the counter now as well. We can't just hate women off the bat for their behaviour. We can call it out and critique it. And again, some of them are too far gone, yes, but broadly speaking, we do need each other. This fall away from tradition has been a tragedy for men and women. It should have never happened. But it doesn't mean we can't learn our lessons and create a better tomorrow, rocky though it may well be. Of course, this is why I speak a lot about spiritual and personal transformation on the new channel, The Sacred Way. It tends to try and imbibe these harsh truths about the world with the spiritual tradition and our own revolution into evolved human beings. Do check that out down below if you're interested. Other than that, thanks for watching the video. Enjoy the rest of your day.